what our concerns are, and sometime in September here in the Statesville area.
And there's plenty to choose from on the list of things to protest here. I mean,
yeah, we're not looking for just one. All right, we'll be back on the Real News with Farron and Brian after a word from our sponsors.
That's 492-7364. Al's Plumbing, a history of keeping your plumbing running.
Attempting to go ahead and start demonizing us. The stress of a poor economy and a liberal administration led by a black president are among the causes of the recent rise. The report from the Southern Poverty Law Center says conspiracy theories about a secret Mexican plan to reclaim the Southwest are also growing amid the public debate about illegal immigration. Paint them as some kind of nuts. Bart McIntyre, a special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, told SPLC researchers that this is the most growth he's seen in more than a decade. All it's lacking is a spark, McIntyre said in the report. It's reminiscent of what we've seen in the 1990s, right-wing militias, people ideologically against paying taxes, and so-called sovereign citizens are popping up in large numbers. According to the report to be released Wednesday, the SPLC is a non-profit civil rights group that, among other activities, investigates hate groups. Last October, someone from the Ohio militia posted a recruiting video on YouTube billed as Wake Up America, and it's been viewed more than 60,000 times. Things are bad, things are real bad, and it's going to get a lot worse, said the man on the video, who did not give his name. Our country is in peril. While an anti-government sentiment has been on the rise over the last 2 years, there aren't as many threats and violent acts at this point as there were in the 1990s, according to the report. The movement bore the likes of Timothy McVeigh, who blew up a federal building in Oklahoma City and killed 168 people, supposedly. But McIntyre fears it's only a matter of time. These militias are concentrated in the Midwest, Pacific Northwest, and Deep South, according to Mark Potok, an SPLC staff director who co-wrote the report. So here we're seeing it, Associated Press. They're coming out saying their militia groups are starting across the country, obviously because they are sick of the imploding economy and the direction that the federal government is taking the American people. So they are already set to demonize anyone that loves liberty, that dares to stand up and have a grievance with the government, which our Constitution says is our right. Though it may be in suspension, it still says that. So I thought this was interesting. You probably will see this in the mainstream press. They will cover this in an effort to demonize anyone with these groups. And there's been a lot of people that wasn't even part of these groups, but the press would say that they were, such as Bill Cooper. So thought that was pretty interesting. And next hour we're going to be covering the swine flu. We're going to do a swine flu report next hour, and we've got a video that we want to play. And then after that, next hour, we will be going to the phone calls. So we're going to continue with the news.
I found this rather interesting. U.S. banks to make $38 billion from overdraft fees. This is from Reuters. Banks in the United States are poised to make $38.5 billion in consumer overdraft fees this year, the Financial Times said, citing research by Mob Services. A large portion of the revenue is likely to come from the most financially stretched consumers, according to the paper. It said the research showed that many banks have increased charges on overdrafts and credit cards in order to boost profits. The median bank overdraft fee rose this year by $1 to $26, the paper said, citing Moab's data. Banks are returning to a fee-driven model, and overdraft fees are their mother lode. The company's founder was quoted by the paper as saying, the overdraft fees account for 75% of service fees charged on consumer deposits. Last year, the U.S. Federal Reserve approved credit card rules to curb unfair practices such as surprise fees and interest rate hikes. And new mortgage lending rules are expected this summer. It is also Mulling's ruling to give bank consumers a chance to opt out of overdraft schemes that can involve fees. So $38 billion made this year by banks in overdraft fees. Isn't that some kind of predatory practice?
Well, you would think so, but I tell you what, growing up, I know banks were more painted like they were your friends, but nowadays they are not. They stick it to the American people every chance they get. And this past week, Bloomberg reported that toxic loans may push 150 more banks to the point of no return. August 14, 2009, more than 150 publicly traded U.S. lenders own non-performing loans that equal 5% or more of their holdings, a level that former regulatories say can wipe out a bank's equity and threaten its survival. The number of banks exceeding the threshold more than doubled in the year through June, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. As real estate and credit card defaults surge, almost 300 reported 3% or more of their loans were non-performing, a term for commercial and consumer debt that has stopped collecting interest or will no longer be paid in full. The biggest banks with non-performing loans of at least 5% include Wisconsin's Marshall and Easley Corp. And Georgia's Savonis Financial Corporation. According to the Bloomberg data, among these exceeding 10%, the biggest in the 50 U.S. states was Michigan's Flagstar Bancorp. All said in a second quarter filing, they were capitalized by regulatory standards, which mean they were considered financially sound. So here we've had all these trillions looted, shoved into the banking system, and yet they're still collapsing. Doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, not really.
Because they're doing this deliberately. They have took the money, they're keeping it, and that way they can facilitate the collapse and take us where they want to go. It's high time for the American people to wake up and take a good look at what's going on here. I found this very interesting. This was reported this week. Obama promises Mexican trucks will roll soon in the United States. And this is according to the August Review. The Bush administration first initiated the NAFTA policy to allow Mexican trucking companies to operate on U.S. highways. NAFTA was originally created by U.S. trade representatives Carla A. Hills, who worked for President George H.W. Bush in 1998. Of course, both were Trilateral Commission members. NAFTA has been disastrous to U.S. jobs and the domestic economy. It is estimated that millions of jobs have been lost since 1991. NAFTA called for the operation of Mexican trucks in the United States and the operation of U.S. trucks in Mexico. U.S. trucks generally refuse to enter Mexico because of the extreme danger to life and property. Now Obama is dealing with Mexican President Calderon and promises to reinvigorate the Mexican trucking program. As reported by Bloomberg, about 4,500 Mexican trucking companies represented by the National Freight Transportation Chamber, known as Canacar, said in June they were seeking $6 billion in compensation from the U.S. because of the trucking conflict, alleging its northern neighbor wasn't complying with NAFTA. So apparently they want $6 billion because we're not honoring the NAFTA agreement. The occasion of the meeting was an extension of the Security and Prosperity Partnership started with George W. Bush in 2005. Obama is careful to avoid the SPP moniker. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper was also present at the talks. The three leaders talked about the drug war and swine flu and how the three nations might cooperate and coordinate efforts to combat both. Thus, it would appear that the roadmap for the North American community and the North American Union is still in place. So President Obama wants to make sure that Mexican trucks can roll all up through the United States. It's just completely amazing. This past week also, it was reported by the American Free Press that the U.S. deficit climbs